Hi guys, Asmo here, and today I have for you the updated POBs for the Toxic Rain Champion. I have made like a low to mid budget version, which is what most people will be aiming for, and then I also made like a more juiced up version and a specific version for abusing soulthirst. Both POBs will be in the description. This one is the one that is clearer, the other one is for a bit more advanced users, so I didn't bother cleaning it up so much. But this one is the main one that you want to look for. It's going to be the first one linked, and basically I'm gonna go through the passives, items, the config, and everything that you need to know. So first of all, when it comes to the leveling, you can simply follow the guide that I made for leveling this build. It's in one of the previous videos, and it's gonna be very similar. As you are leveling, you're picking up these passive, you're picking up Fury Bolts and Destroyer for the Shattering Steel. Later you unspec these nodes and you simply go through here. You can go either this way and continue to your bow nodes, or you can go straight to the right side, pick up this life and continue as before, picking up these bow nodes, then picking up these bow nodes, then going to this chaos damage and then going up here, and it's very straightforward. So while leveling, you either move through the right side through these passives instead of going up here, or you move through these, right? You can pick up this attack speed, you can pick up this life, projectile damage, whichever way you prefer. It's not really a big deal because later you will respec that anyway. So there are versions in the passive skill tree that are before cluster jewels and after cluster jewels. So before cluster jewels, you are going to be pathing up here. You can also path actually this way and take these out. This will give you a little bit more int because this node actually gives int. It's pretty much the same int, but I guess just more life and mana on hit. So either way, you're pathing either through this or you're pathing through this. It's not really a big deal either way, and you're going to end up grabbing atrophy at the end of it. This is about like level 96 passive, so there's plenty of passives. If you if you don't have enough points, you basically cut out some life. You can cut out life from this. You can cut out jewel sockets as well. You can cut out jewel sockets from here before you have it. You can cut this whole thing before you get to it. It's not very important. This is just something that serves as a filler before you get the cluster jewels, because the cluster jewel setup is much superior. Like when you switch to cluster jewel, you lose a little bit of life because you're losing this wheel and you're losing a little bit of regen, but you're gaining an insane amount of damage. So this is the setup that I would definitely recommend. These cluster jewels are not difficult to craft. Basically what you want is a large cluster jewel with that will have like Wicked Pal and Unholy Grace, and ideally also like Touch of Cruelty. It's not that difficult to craft these. You can, for example, harvest craft these things, and then the biggest increase in terms of damage that you can get from mediums is actually the projectile ones, because they give you like 35% increase here, 30% and attack speed increased here, which is as good as this thing, like the Unholy Grace, maybe like 2% less attack speed, but still it's very good. And then of course the jewel socket at the end. The jewels that I have here are basically a good example of what you want to aim for. You want to aim for the chaos dot multi because it has been buffed, it goes up to 8% now. You want to aim for attack speed with bows mod, or just regular attack speed, any attack speed that you can get. Sometimes you're gonna get like attack speed and also attack speed and cast speed hybrid, sometimes attack speed with bows. Any combinations that gives you as much attack speed is great. And then also increased maximum life. Before you get, for example, your stats on gear that you'll need, like some extra int and stuff like that, you can fill it in on the cluster jewels. So for example, you can see, oh, I'm actually missing here 2 strength on the setup that I have, but it's actually pretty easy to find. Just snipe them by a cluster jewel that will have like +2 strength or +2 all attributes or something on a small passive, and you'll be perfectly fine. So that's definitely something that you want to also look out for. In terms of the masteries, I'm gonna go through all the masteries and explain what they do for you. So one of the first masteries that you're gonna pick up once you switch to the Toxic Rain and Caustic Arrow for leveling, it's gonna be this one. So 8% increased movement speed while phasing and chance to gain phasing for 4 seconds on kill. This is really strong. The phasing and the movement speed are very nice for you. Then we've got this one, which is 10% more skill effect duration. This is massive because it's not just increased, it's actually more. 4, so it scales with as much of the skill effect duration as you're gonna have in other places. Then we've got these live ones. The live ones, there is a specific order that you wanna pick them. So first one that you wanna pick is probably going to be the plus 50 to max life. The second one that you're gonna pick is probably gonna be the 10% increased maximum life, and then the third one is going to be vitality has 100% increased mana reservation efficiency. This will make your vitality basically reserve half of the mana that it does. Vitality is really good. It allows you to sustain blood rage, which gives you frenzy charges and attack speed, both of which are incredibly powerful in terms of like giving you more damage. So you definitely want to run vitality, which is gonna also provide you with extra regen on top of that. From this one, we are picking increased mana reservation efficiency of skills, and then in the early setup before you also have efficacy. No, not efficacy, enlighten, sorry. Before you have enlighten to reduce mana reservation of your auras, you can run in the evasion mastery. Grace has 25% increased mana reservation efficiency to also give you some extra mana. And that's basically it when it comes to the masteries. There's also this one, which is 10% chance to suppress spell damage if your boots, helmet and gloves have evasion, which they should. So that's basically 10% extra. If you have extra spell suppression on your gear, you simply switch that one to prevent plus 2% suppressed spell damage, and your EHP is gonna go up. You're basically gonna be taking, was it 4% less damage from spells if you are at 100%, which you should be. But by default, before you get capped to the 100%, you wanna grab this one so that you are it's easier for you to cap it. And then we also have this one, which is 20% increased AoE. This will allow us to get to the AoE radius of 21 for Toxic Rain, which is very nice and allows you to consistently overlap 5 pods, which is very important for your damage. Other than that, I think the tree is self-explanatory. There are some masteries that we don't pick, such as this evasion mastery here, such as the chaos mastery here. There is nothing really good from the chaos masteries for us specifically. You could get this one if you manage to like cap your chaos res somehow. This would give you good amount of damage. The +1 to level of skills is something you never want to pick. You're gonna kill yourself using this with Toxic Rain because we are attacking like at least 5 times per second, so it's absolutely crazy. You're gonna kill yourself in 2 seconds basically. Effect of Withered is good, but it's not as much damage and it's not as important as picking up all the other nodes that we're grabbing. Chaos Res and Conversion doesn't really do anything for us, so the Chaos Mastery is not important. You could pick the Wither effect, but it's not necessary. So that's basically it when it comes to the passive skill tree for this version of the build. Everything else should be pretty self-explanatory. We're not picking up that much life, but that's because we are focusing on mitigation and avoidance, which is gonna actually give us much higher effective HP if we were instead going for like life stacking, right? Life stacking is a thing of the past. Now it's all about like building up actual layers of defense. Effective HP is the important part, not just the number of the HP that you have here. And also here we have the ascendancy points. So the order in which you want to pick the ascendancy points, if you follow my guide, is to basically grab inspirational first. This will allow you to run the Defiance banner early on and have increased damage from Malevolence, increased regen from Vitality, increased mana from Clarity if you're running Clarity. Like this is just very powerful node early on. And the first lab is very far away from the Cruel lab, but Cruel lab and Merciless are kind of close together, which will allow you to pick up these nodes, which will give you Fortify and all of these benefits. And the last one is this one, which basically is going to end up giving you some less damage taken from enemies, because you and your totems are going to be taunting and you're going to be taking less damage. So that's it when it comes to these passives. Let's go maybe through the skills. So the skill setups that you want is first one, the Toxic Rain, and these are, again, this is like low to medium budget, so there is no Awaken skills, there is no even Empower being used. We're using Mirage Archer, although Empower gives you slightly more damage, and then Empower 4 gives you, that's where the big damage increase happens, right? Especially if you have a bow with like plus levels. But before that, you can just rely on the Mirage Archer and you're gonna be totally fine. By the way, the damage that you see here, the full DPS, the config is set to Cyrus DPS. This of course changes if you do, of course, not a Cyrus DPS, but this is kind of better indication of your actual damage, because when you're clearing and not hitting the boss, You can see this is about 7 million damage, 8 million damage. This is very similar to clearing with the totems, like hitting with the totems together on the sires. So it's a good indication of your damage overall. So like about 7 million damage with this setup and the gear that you're gonna see in a moment, which in my opinion you can like get in a few days very easily without like investing too much currency into the build, because this is supposed to be like the mid-range kind of introductory entry-level version to this. So we've got Toxic Rain, efficacy, void manipulation, vicious proge, faster attacks, and mirage archer. Those are the best supports. You don't really want to take supports that are gonna mess with you too much, like for example concentrate effect is gonna mess with your AoE. Increased duration is not gonna really give you that much more damage because it relies on the enemy staying like the whole duration in the pods. It's nice to get extra duration, but not at the cost of like dot multi or something like that. So this will not give you that much. And then slower projectiles also not as good as other stuff that we're gonna be grabbing, like the calling strikes. You definitely want to rely on these supports that you see here until you get Empower, and then you swap Mirage Archer for Empower basically. And that should be in your weapon, by the way, right? This should be like the setup that you have in your weapon. Because that's where you're going to have your +2 levels later on. This is Ballista setup, which is gonna have same Toxic Rain, Ballista, Focused Ballista, which is gonna scale, make it scale with your attack speed, multiple totems so that you can place more totems and stack your Wither quicker, Withering Touch for application of the Wither, and efficacy so that the Wither stays longer on the target as well. Very self-explanatory setup as well. For the auras, you want to run Malevolence, Grace, and Vitality early on. Later on in the higher setup, you're gonna also be able to run Determination for the extra armor, but right now this is not really something you want to do. You just want to run Vitality because it will allow you to also run Blood Rage. There is also an option of not running Vitality and Blood Rage and going for Skitterbots. If you look at the damage, 7 million, if I swap these two and use Skitterbots, our mana allows for it and it's about the same damage. However, we would be losing this source of Frenzy charges, so we would need to find some other source of Frenzy charges, and also we would have a lower regen, because if you can see here, total life, we don't have any regen here, but if we do this, we actually have a pretty decent positive regen, like total net life, like net life regen, 46 life per second. It's pretty nice to have that to compensate for a little bit of the damage that you're gonna be taking just in general from monsters hitting you. So I would go with the Vitality Blood Rage setup. And then also you can put it in your gloves, which is gonna give you +2 levels, because the gloves will have a crafted +1 to socketed AoE gems, which the auras are. So definitely want to grab that. And Vitality can be run on max level, but you run it at whatever level your mana allows you in order to compensate for the cost of it. Then we've got Withering Step, Flame Dash, Second Wind, Life Tap. Life Tap is here so that you can always cast them. You will never like run out of mana and then not be able to move out of danger, so that's why the Life Tap is here. It's completely optional. Same with Second Wind, they're not necessary and you can later swap them for something else, such as for example Clarity. If you want to run that, that's what can go into that socket. And then we've got Cast When Damage Taken, Molten Shell setup with Val Molten Shell. Keep it at whatever level you are comfortable with. I like keeping Cast When Damage Taken at around level 3. It's like around 500-600 damage taken, and then it activates, because I usually run pretty low on life in terms of like the life total. So I like it triggering pretty early so that I don't take too much damage. We've got increased duration for that, and also Defiance Banner, which is here so that when you drop it on the ground, it also has the increased duration. Defiance Banner is free, so it doesn't cost you any reservation. And then the Despair comes from the ring. So let's go through the gear. The gear is, except for the amount of jewels, it's very entry level. The bow, initially you can run with either Quill Rain, and if you look at the combined DPS here, this is like the main self-cast Toxic Rain. 3.5 million versus the +2 bow, which you can just alt spam on something, right, and craft attack speed. It has the same damage, right? Quill Rain, and that the Quill Rain only is better on single target. When you look at the total damage with the totems, right, with the Ballista totems, because it also scales the totems, it's better for that purpose, but not much. So Quill Rain versus the +2 short bow. I think it's actually better to go for the 6-linked short bow from the divination cards. Just roll +2 on it and run that as soon as you can instead of Quill Rain, unless you're doing like a lot of bossing. But then you're gonna have to 6-link your Quill Rain, which is gonna be a little bit harder. And then you can go for like a really, it's not expensive at all to craft like a +3 bow. Doesn't require multi-craft or anything. You can just do it with fossils. You can do it in many different ways. You can check out the numerous guides on YouTube for this, how to craft +3 bow, or just buy it. And this is gonna give you the most damage right now for not that much currency at all. Then we've got a quiver, non-influenced quiver with just damage over time multiplier and life and some resistances. You can craft resistances on it. You can craft armor and evasion on it. I just showed it here because that's an option that you can do. If you have resistances that you need to fill in, you can craft resistances instead of that. You can have crafted life on it if it hits like some good res and the dot multi. It's a non-influenced quiver. The best base, in my opinion, is probably going to be the plus life gain for every enemy hit by your attacks, because even though Toxic Rain damage does not really come from the hits, it still hits enough that this will give you some extra life, especially while clearing. Later on, when you want to invest into like a better quiver, the one that I would recommend is actually going to be accuracy, because you're gonna want to hit for like stacking Tailwind and Elusive and stuff. For the helmet, you wanna essence craft for the reduced mana reservation, and then you wanna hit some life and resistances on that. Basically that's it. Just essence craft until you hit some life and resistances and you're good. For the body armor, you want Queen of the Forest. We're stacking a lot of evasion. This is gonna give you some life and res, lots of evasion, and it's gonna make your movement speed very, very nice. So definitely recommend Queen of the Forest. For the gloves, just life and res, and craft the prefix +1 to level of socketed AoE gems and increased area of effect. This is enough to bring you, together with the mastery that you're picking up from the bow skills, to 21 radius on your Toxic Rain, which is ideal for hitting with the 5 overlapping pods. In terms of the boots, you want to grab Atziri's Step, ideally with like an enchant that gives you some extra attack speed, because this will increase your damage while clearing by a lot. And they have chance to suppress spell damage, which I added in the PoB here because it's not yet on the item in the PoB, but you can roll it up to 26% as far as I know. Yeah, so that's it. Then when we get the amulet, we can roll on the amulet either chaos damage over time multiplier. Actually, this is damage over time multiplier mod, so I technically should correct that. Okay, so we got the damage over time multiplier on this. You could get an influenced amulet and have +1 to level of chaos skills, which would be like the best mod. +1 to levels for TR are really, really huge. But in general, what I aim for in the beginning is to grab some life, dot multi, and ideally intelligence, or like all stats. Int is very, very important, and you can get it either on the amulet or on the rings or on the jewels. There are many places where you can fill it in. I chose to put it on the amulet here. You want to get ideally the agate amulet because you're gonna need strength and you're gonna need the int, and you basically craft on the amulet and on both of the rings -2 total mana cost of non-channeling skills to make your Toxic Rain a little bit cheaper, because you're gonna cast it very quickly, which is gonna drain your mana. So ideally later on we're gonna lower it to 0 mana in the high budget version, but here you just need to lower it a little bit. And we allocate corruption because that's simply the most damage according to the PoB that you can put on this, but there are also other options. If you don't want to allocate corruption, you can allocate, for example, potency of will. You can allocate also the atrophy. You can allocate defensively, for example, prismatic skin, but that's going to be more expensive. +2 to maximum elemental resistances is absolutely insane. That's what I'll be allocating whenever I can. But for the damage, corruption initially is the best one. Then we've got the rings. This is just a life res ring with some attributes and crafted minus mana cost. Non-influenced, just a chaos damage ring, just showing it as an option. You can have a chaos damage ring, you can have vermilion ring for the life, whatever you like here. You can have a resistances to fill them if you still need them somewhere else. And then we need a curse on hit ring. This is the only influenced item early on that I would aim for as soon as possible, which is going to be just any hunter ring. Roll on it Despair with some life and you're good. If you have Despair and life on it, then you basically cast the minus mana cost and you're good. You can have it on like a base that has resistances, on a chaos damage base, any base that you want. For the belt, in the budget version, I'll just go for like any Stygian Vice with life and res. You can craft armor evasion on it, you can craft resistances, you can craft like hybrid life and armor or something. And then for the jewel, this is just an example of the mods you can go for, which would be, for example, increased chaos damage, attack speed, max life, and also increased damage over time while wielding a 200 weapon. Works for bows. This is one of the best mods that you can actually get on an abyssal jewel for this, and that's going to give you a bunch of damage if you can manage to get a decent jewel here. So that's the budget version before you go into like abusing of the belt that I'm going to show later. And that's it. For the flask, you just have a life flask, remove corrupting blood. You can have enduring mana flask that removes ignite. You can have silver flask with some extra attack speed. I have it with extra charges here so that for bosses I can use it twice. We have quicksilver here with increased movement speed. The adrenaline actually is going to go higher than 8%. It's going to go to like 14% or something. And then we've got a jade flask as well with increased duration for even more tankiness. And that's basically it. In terms of the effective HP is like 100k and like 80k physical, and we've got about half of all of those for the maximum hit taken, so it's surprisingly tanky. Well, it's not surprising because we're playing champion, but it's very, very tanky. I think in the config we have Fortify, right? Yes, we have Fortify enable, as we should, because this works. A lot of people were worried that this is not gonna work now with the Fortify changes. It's basically exactly the same. Champion still gets Fortify at the value of 20% less damage taken from hits, so nothing changed here, and you still get that. That's why we're picking this ascendancy. One of the reasons why we're picking this ascendancy, so it's still very, very strong. So that's basically it. Again, just to repeat, the budget versions, even lower budget than this, before you have cluster jewels, you go for these passives, everything is in the tree, and before the bow, you can go for like Quill Rain, you're gonna have like 4.5 million damage on single target, it's gonna be still totally fine. So let's go now into the more expensive version, and let me show you what we can do, right? So the more expensive version, ignore the numbers because the numbers mean nothing here. The numbers are just gonna be millions of damage. It's gonna be from 10 to 100 million damage, depending on the situation that you're looking at. But the things that we can do with the higher budget version is mainly abuse the soul thirst, right? So what we want to do is we want to get a soul thirst. This is going to be something that I'm going to be doing, definitely, this league, and we can corrupt it. Definitely want to corrupt it because the implicit on it normally is pretty bad, right? It's like stun recovery and shit. It's a cloth belt. So you definitely want to enchant it and corrupt it. You can actually enchant corrupted items now. You can enchant with like withered enemies, but you have -6% to all resistances, and that's going to work with your withering step. You can have regen on this. You can have attack speed during flask effect on the corruption. You can have malevolence have increased effect. So many corruptions, man. There are so many good corruptions. Grace effect, malevolence effect, determination effect. We can have all elemental resistances. We can have skill effect duration, movement speed, max life. We can have also attack speed, AoE. Holy shit, there are just so many corruptions. Just corrupt these belt, like all of them. Corrupt all of these, but make sure first that you're gonna get the reduced flask effect duration to 20%. That's the most important mod. Secondly, the important one would be like life. Put some life catalyst on it, and then you can start corrupting it and enchanting it and whatever. And this will make sure this will grant you Soul Eater during flask effect. The flask effect is gonna be very, very long, because what we're doing right now is we're grabbing flask like this. We're grabbing. Let me grab a flask. So if we grab a flask right now, utility flask, for example, ruby flask. Okay, ruby flask is gonna be now base 8 seconds. We can get quality to 28% with Hillock and Research. So that's going to be like almost 10 seconds already. Then we're going to apply the Enkindling Orb for 100% increased duration, because it's going to actually be changed dispatch from 90 to 100. So that's already like 20-second flask, right, duration. Then we can also roll 30% increased duration in here, the Experimenter's one. So that's already like super insanely long flask. And then what we're doing on the passive skill tree, we're going down here, picking out this node. This is what I'm going to be personally playing with. My version is not going to look like the mid-tier version that I'm showing, because I'm going to go into Soul Thirst abusing immediately. And I'm gonna be grabbing this armor. Graceful Assault is extremely powerful, gives you so much armor and evasion, gives you onslaught on kill, gives you onslaught effect. This is like 60% onslaught effect. It's absolutely insane. And then we're gonna grab Cluster from here, even more evasion here, and then we're gonna be able to grab the nodes that are gonna be mediums for the Flask duration. So the Flask duration mediums are gonna have 35% increase effect of the small passive skills, which is gonna turn these 6% increased Flask effect duration to 8. So that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 32%, and then 10%, so that is 42. So we're gonna have 42% increase per cluster jewel. So we're gonna have 2 of those, that is 84. Then we're gonna grab this 94, 109, and this is 129, right? So 129 increase Flask effect duration here as well, which is like another, I don't know, 12 seconds or something on our flask. So our flasks will last well over 30 seconds. Well, if you wanted to go crazy, you could also pick up like 40% Flask effect duration here, but these nodes are very inefficient to get to. So we're gonna have super long Flask effect duration, and then with Flask effect, this is just like example damage, right? Let's this is gonna be like while clearing the scourge, right? Because this is what this build is made for. We're gonna have like, let's say it's arbitrary number of damage, doesn't matter, right? Ignore the number, just remember it's like 35, okay? And then if we get the buffs with the soulthirst, let's say we stack it to 500% increased attack speed, which you should be able to stack in like, I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds easily. Then you're gonna have basically double the damage, right? If you just look at the total DPS here, 22 million to 49 million, right? Attack speed scales toxic rain damage insanely. You're gonna have absolutely crazy attack speed. But the thing that you need to make sure that you account for is the mana cost, right? So you need to make sure that it doesn't cost any mana. So what we're doing is we're crafting on all of our gear the -2 mana cost. We are grabbing the replica jewel, where is it? Replica Conqueror's Efficiency, -9 to mana cost. And then we're also grabbing Watcher's Eye, which is gonna have dot multi with Malevolence, and also -2 total mana cost while affected by Clarity. You fit in level 1 Clarity, and your Toxic Rain costs 0 mana. So with the 0 mana Toxic Rain cost, you can juice the attack speed insanely, right? So if you, let me go back here. So we're gonna be attacking like 13 times per second. Absolutely insane, right? So this is something that we are also going to be doing. Other than that, I would definitely go through down here and pick up the +2 to suppress the damage, right? This is basically what you want to do. If you're at 100% spell suppression, that means you are taking half of the damage from spells. So if you're increasing that from mitigating 50% to mitigating 52%, that means you're taking 4% damage less, right? And with this node, you're taking another 6% damage less. So you're only going to be taking 45% damage from spells instead of 50% damage from spells if you pick up those two nodes. Other than that, we are still going to try as hard as we can to squeeze the second cluster jewel because it's the most damage we possibly can get. So this is basically the same as in the previous setup, and we're cutting a bunch of life here, we're cutting some life here, and we're just cutting everything we can in order to squeeze out more damage, more flask duration. And the funny thing is, we are still going to be incredibly tanky. Like, we are still gonna have huge effective HP pool, and we're going to be an absolute monster in the Scourge. In terms of the gear, what you can go for is you can go for a hunter bow. I think Path of Math has a good guide on like different ways of crafting this type of a bow, so you can check his channel for that. This bow is fairly easy to craft, it's not expensive at all, and it's actually better than synthesized +1 bow, because if you get like the T1 roll of the increased chaos damage over time, it's really massive. You can get like double dot multi quiver. Ideally, what you'd like to get on a quiver is actually quiver with some extra accuracy, and then you'd like to get boots instead of the Atsiri step. You want to go for Tailwind and Elusive on them. If you can get Tailwind and Elusive, that's gonna mean you need to crit. So you basically get on the boots the enchant that says, where is it? Crit. Where is the enchantment? Not, this is the wrong item I'm looking at. Okay, boots, enchantment, crit. You want to go for 120% increased critical strike chance if you haven't crit recently. What this means is that because we have a low accuracy, we hit like only 80% of the time, and we're gonna have, if I don't crit recently, right? Does it have crit recently? If I don't crit recently, I'm gonna have also like a decent crit chance. I think it goes basically like doubles. So we go to like over 10% crit chance, which means we're gonna be critting regularly. But if you haven't crit, your crit chance increases, and then you basically proc your tailwind again. So this is something that you can do to like sustain tailwind even on toxic rain. I've done it a few leagues ago and it worked like a charm. You can have like permanent, elusive, and tailwind while clearing as well from the boots, even on toxic rain, despite the fact that you're relying on something that doesn't really do hit damage. So that's what we want to set up for this. For the gloves, you can get like influenced gloves with more damage. You can get attack speed on them. There's so much stuff you can get. For the amulet, you can get like +2 to levels, chaos dot multi. For the rings, you can get increased chaos damage as well. You can get attack speed everywhere you can, just stack attack speed as much as possible. And you can also get away with using, other than using like awakened gems, you want to use awakened void manipulation, because it's going to actually give you +1 level to chaos gems. That's why this is at level 22 to simulate this thing, adding +1 to the levels. What you can actually get away with next league is potentially run something like Conk effect. And then if you want to increase the AoE radius, what you do is you run more of these jewels. You run jewels that will have corrupted increased area of effect, and you can have also like influenced items with increased area of effect. You can have amulet craft for this if you can manage your mana. There is so much that you can do. So as you can see, the potential of this build is absolutely insane. You can get tens of millions of damage, no problem, if you invest currency into it. And the budget version, of course, is still extremely powerful. Like the thing that I like most about the budget version of this, which this is, that I'm showing right now, is that it has really, really good damage while having really, really good survivability. It's like a perfect balance of a tanky build that is gonna able to survive a long time in the scourge, and is gonna be able to like clear outside of the scourge, go back in, clear, like just go in and out. And with the soulthirst, right, we're gonna be basically having, 500% increased. Okay, how about we do this easier? We do it like this. We're gonna have insane damage. We're gonna have absolutely insane damage in the scourge while clearing with the soulthirst. So that's basically it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Both of the POBs will be in the description. And have a nice league start. Take care, guys. See ya.